Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another geopolitical analysis video. Please like and subscribe, support this video posted today. Wow, I'm laughing. You must be laughing. So, sounds like JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, words on the street, that we're going to bail out First Republic. We saw this coming in this channel. We said months ago liquidity will be sucked from the markets and certain banks will be in trouble and more turmoil will take place. We're seeing across in Europe the bank of the Credit Suisse, which we've known for months now was suffering from access to liquidity, is probably going to get propped up. Again, banks, bigger banks, are not allowed to fail in this case. Why? Because we're seeing that in the form of capitalism, you need to have these flush outs to cleanse the entire system. All these zombie companies, all these entities that owe a lot of debt and have no cash flow, at some point they need to default, they need to flush out of the system. But not in this case. There's a lot of interest for propping up some of these banks. But what nobody's telling you is that this bailout is uber inflationary. Uber inflationary. In the United States, we heard the Federal Reserve is actually going to pump in around $2 trillion. So that means that at some point, you'll end up paying for this, the taxpayer. And even my fellow Europeans, if you have several banks that will actually, we will see that in the future, suffer from having less liquidity, what's going to happen is that you're going to see the ECB probably bail out the bigger banks like it has happened before. And the person who pays for that is the taxpayer. And in this circumstance, we're seeing that nobody's talking about the possibility of increasing inflation because this money has to come from somewhere, and we're either going to see it in taxes or we're going to see it in price action in the not too um, uh, far future from here. So this is very concerning, and I think that we all have to be our own central bank. And what I mean by that is that if you're your own central bank, you don't mind if there's a devaluation, if a debasement of your currency, because you can have few gold coins, few silver coins, and you can keep it aside. You might think that this is a little bit extreme. I keep on saying this, but look what happened with gold. Look at what happened with the price of gold as soon as this whole financial fear started cratering. Look what happened with gold. It just shot up. Sure, this is temporary, but it's because of fear. Whenever fear takes place, everybody flocks to the US dollar or gold. That's the reality. And a lot of these stocks now that are rallying are actually going to go back to other assets. I think commodities are really going to skyrocket from here. Now, moving on, I also wanted to talk about the conceit of these larger entities, the arrogance these larger entities have that they're too big to fail. It is unfortunate as we're seeing more and more the consolidation of these big entities buying up smaller regional banks. And I believe, and many other analysts out there believe, that this is the beginning of a new reset of the economy. And it might take place in the form of CBDCs, like we've mentioned, or in the COVID-19 economy video as well. This is very concerning. And this is something that I think everybody has to be warned about, because it is frightening to see larger banks scoop up all those assets from the smaller banks that are failing. And the regional banks are failing for a reason. And the system is letting those banks fail for a reason, right? The more you have consolidated entities, the more it's easier to control the outcome. And our freedom is at stake here. Privacy is at stake here. because when you have larger entities that come in, scoop up assets, they starting they start to tighten the rules of the game, and they control this entire rigged system. That's why I believe if you hold your own hard assets, you're better off. And I do think that commodities in the next few quarters is actually going to play out really positively for us. And in this situation, that is a good way to park some liquidity. Again, we're seeing the war is exacerbated. Uh, Tension between Russia and the U.S. escalating. We saw what happened in the Black Sea with the U.S. drone. So these are turbulent times. And I believe that the U.S., now that its economy is cratering, is going to be much more aggressive, is going to take riskier moves because, again, its hegemony is being threatened. It's being pushed back by a lot of these entities who once used to be allies. And I'm referring to now the Saudis, Saudi Arabia, who used to be one of the most strategic ally of the US, now partnering up, opening doors with Iran, and of course, being buddy buddy with China. So this is something to consider. And this is something also to note in the future because we're seeing that alliances are shifting. So that means the supply chains are going to be shifted, and certain places will not freely give out their commodities, pardon me, products and services to the West when they have a strong alliance to China, to Iran, etc., etc. We also saw a very conspicuous exercise of Iran, Russia, and China, a navy exercise that took place. Now, that is a message to the US and NATO because it has been for some time now that Russia and the East saw NATO as a Trojan horse of the US entering into different areas and territories. So, this is going to be really interesting to see its development and where it's going to take us. So, um, I do think that China is going to press more and more the US to make a more riskier move. And we're seeing that China is unveiling different rockets that have a very similar science behind the North Korean. So we might be seeing now some talks be secret talks be with China and North Korea in order to pressure again the US. And this is this is something extremely frightening as we see a lot of strong armies get a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more testy with their adversaries. So, especially now with NATO having around Norway larger troops pressuring Russia, because again, there's a lot of wars that happen underneath the sea that we don't see. We have submarines. The Russian submarines are one of the strongest cards of Russia. And this is something that the NATO and other our countries are trying to discern because the versatility of the Russian warfare industrial system is wide. If China and Iran adds into the mix, things are going to get very hard for the US. Very hard for the US. So we're seeing much more aggressive statements from Putin as well. And also, we're seeing a lot of aggressive statements from the NATO alliances. NATO is doing in the Arctic with over 600 Marines exercises and different drills. And this is concerning again because we're seeing that there is a lot of war, a lot of contention happening in the energy sector, but also we're seeing in the actual military, we're seeing a lot of drills there and a lot of possible alliances that could be very devastating. Can you imagine a war where China, Iran, Russia is involved? You have Israel that is pushing back. But can you imagine the dynamics? This is going to be a very, very unstable few years ahead. And let's hope things don't get extreme. But I'm afraid that given what happened prior to the Ukrainian conflict, where you saw the presence of a lot of different militaries, the Russian, the Ukrainian, you saw some NATO officers and some other mercenary groups just rallying up and doing different drills, indicating, sending a message that conflict is about to begin. The same thing is happening right now. And I think we need to be very cautious and observe our surroundings because we're in a very fragile point. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, share the video, and I hope to see you on our next video. We're going to try to dissect a little bit more the geopolitical situation and see where things take us. Bye for now.